First introduced in 2014, Justin Geisinger of Air Hill Acres Dairy Farm in Franklin County, Pennsylvania, is featured as part of the Pasture Soil Health Project video series because he regularly grazes an on-farm riparian area. But this is just one factor in his family's success. Let's check in with Justin to learn more about this and other challenges met in 2015 and 2016.
We're down in the riparian areas are part of our regular schedule with every other paddock on the farm. In the spring of the year, we'll come in, we'll graze it, and then just depending on the weather. But generally, in the spring, during the spring flush, we're on about a 21-day rotation. And then as we get into the summer, we'll start to lengthen that out to 30 days, being that we'll be in here on a certain day, and 30 days later we'll come back. Once it gets dry, we start to get into drought conditions, and we'll push it on out 50 days till we come back. And our riparian area isn't a lot in terms of our total acreage, but I use this as kind of my training area to help me, because I intend on picking up some more ground to rent or purchase in the future. And if it has streams on it in riparian areas, I want to have an idea of how to go in there and manage those areas. So I'm using this as my proving grounds, if you will. But this area that we're standing in right now, it gave us 1,500 pound of dry matter 5 of the 7 days that we were in here this year. And 1,500 pound dry matter is what I need for the milking herd for one day. So it is a significant source of forage for us. It's not something that we want to just let go. And I think we can do a lot of good with controlling erosion by doing managed grazing down through this riparian area, rather than just letting it go for nothing. Yeah, it's November 5th here now, and this particular area of the riparian buffer, we were just in here 7 to 10 days ago. I don't remember exactly the date, but we were just in here within 10 days ago, and the cattle got the bulk of their daily dry matter intake off of this pasture, and they did go back to the barn for hay, but there was significant amount of growth out here. Well, I originally got started with Suzette and Titus. It's actually kind of an interesting story. Whenever I first wanted to get into grazing, I wanted to recruit somebody to help me keep from making a lot of mistakes, because whenever I switched into going into grazing, I was just coming off of a major down price year in the conventional milk market, and so I had very, very, very little cash to work with, and we live in an area that has lots of deer, and I was not interested in just putting up a $5 fence, using the cheapest post, the cheapest wire, because I don't like chasing cows. And so I wanted to put up a good fence, and I wanted to get that laid out, get it laid out where it should be. And when I found out that Titus, who at the time was one of the only grazers that I knew very well, when I found out that he happened to work for, I think it was NRCS, that just kind of made things all the better. And so I called Titus, and I had already had some experience with Suzette from before, from doing a nutrient management plan. So when the 3 of us got together, we really made things click, I'll say, in terms of putting together a grazing plan and laying out the fences and
I actually got involved because Justin had come into the office inquiring about equip and how he might be able to convert his cropland to pasture land. And being the grazing specialist for this area, I was called in to come out and work with him and help him develop a plan. And then we went from a grazing plan, he got an equip contract, and then from the equip contract, we implemented it. And then Justin's kind of taken off from there with his management. I'd say it's probably more on a decrease, mostly because we tend to shy away from grazing the riparian areas. And it's really hard to find those producers that are going to manage it and are worried about the ecosystem and how it's going to manage and how it's going to work out. And making sure that they don't overgraze it and that they protect the stream and the animals aren't out there wallowing in the stream. So like Justin, he only puts them out at night when it's really hot so they don't go wallowing in the stream. Or he puts them out through the day when it's really cool, where he knows they're not going to hang out in those areas. So you got to really, and it's hard to pick and choose, but that's why I say you got to get to know your producers before you say, oh yeah, we're going to allow you to flash graze it. You really got to get to know them and maybe meet with them 3 or 4 times and be that pain and say, you know, what are you thinking here? And then go from there. I think the most interesting part was just watching it go from cropland to pasture land and how well of a management style Justin has and how he's capitalized on that. I mean, he went from not really having a lot of knowledge into pasture to being one of the ones that we call all the time with, can you help this person? Can you advise him on what to do? And so I think it's come a long way from that standpoint.
There has been several producers that have come around have asked me, you know, Justin, what are you doing? Because I mean, what we're doing here is very much different than what our neighbors are doing. And so we have had several producers who have stopped around and wanted to see what we're doing, why. I've had some guys younger than me ask, you know, how can we get into farming? You know, to start up the, what I'll call conventional way with, you know, heavy, you know, cows in confinement, TMR, all that kind of stuff, it's capital intensive. Whereas to get started with grazing, you know, the sky's the limit on, I mean, you can start out with very little if you don't mind chasing cows, you know, if it's not a big thing for you, if you don't live in an area where it's a major problem, you can get by with $5 fence, you know, cheap stuff. But you know, grazing is just, it opens a whole new world to new and beginning farmers to get started. In fact, several of the young guys that came around to my place, I told them, I said, you have an advantage over me, and that is you have no bad habits to break. You know, it's all learning, it's all new, and so I think it's a lot easier from that perspective. Hasn't really been anything new in terms of management or in terms of the farm. You know, we have adjusted our cow numbers. That'd be about the most newest thing in terms of we don't have as many cows as we did before, and we adjusted that down for the amount of demand or the amount of supply of grass that I grow on the farm. Having too many cows conflicted with my management goals for grazing. I wanted to be able to let the cows come and go as they please from the pastures to the barn, and with having too many cows, they were grazing the grass way too far down for what I wanted. Well, in terms of the bottom line, maybe more specifically the margin, it has actually really helped us because buying hay is not it's not an equal, and it's hard to purchase hay that's the same quality of what I can make here on the farm, just because not everybody that makes hay has the same goal in mind that I have in terms of milk cow quality hay on everything. And so finding that kind of really good quality hay that meets my objective was pretty tough. So I would rather grow most of my hay anyhow here on this farm and either harvest it by way of the cows or else bale it for winter feeding. In terms of noticeable changes, I would say definitely on amount of forage available. We do have to take into account weather variations from one year to the next, but having less cows on hand allowed us to leave a taller residue at the end of our grazing period. We switch paddocks every day, so the cows are only in one paddock for 24 hours. And by having less cows in there, we were able to leave more of the residue that I wanted to leave. I'd never like to take any more than half, and generally I like to take maybe not even half. And by having too many cows, it makes it very challenging to do. By having too many cows, you have to basically adjust the amount of time the cows are out in the field. If you have too many cows and you're not able to only take half, then you have to keep the cows penned up into a sacrifice lot or something and only turn them out to give them the amount of time that it takes for them to graze that grass down. And by having less cows on hand, it eliminated the need to be able to have to regulate that time. Well, our pastures did well. Having less cows on hand, we were able to leave a taller stubble, taller residue at the end of each grazing period. So having that taller, that more forage left over helped hold our moisture in. You know, what dews we did get was the only amount of moisture we got for that dry period. So having that tall grass held that moisture down in there. So I think that really helped us. And then also by having a taller grass, we also had more root mass down into the soil. So I think we were able to weather the storm, the drought a lot better. You know, once we got towards the end of August into September, things really started to brown up at that point. We did go on full feed for about 2 weeks there towards the end of September. But then once we got rain in October, it was like spring again. So, okay, well, coming into autumn, generally our concerns generally will amount to not grazing too far down. You know, we are here in the beginning of November, and I don't want to go into winter with grass that's just barely above the soil. I want to have some growth there, some crop there, because I'd like to go through winter and have a little bit of something there, because then come spring, those areas will green up faster than others. You know, not a concern, but a positive to fall is that you don't have issues with cows gathering up due to hot weather or wanting to wade in the water or anything like that because of the cooler weather. So fall has some challenges and some benefits too. Well, the plans for the next year are, as of, like I said, this is the 5th of November, and as of April 15th, I believe it is when the remaining amounts of the farm that are not organic, they become certified organic, so we can put them into the rotation with the milking herd as well. But in terms of cow numbers, we're not going to do anything in terms of increasing cow numbers, because I want to have a surplus of hay on hand before I even decide to add more animals to it. But as far as changing anything in terms of fencing or alleyways or water or anything, no, we're not making any changes there at all. Everything, we like everything the way it is right now. My records show that we were continuing our rotation up until the day after Christmas. We did do some spot grazing. It more or less amounted to when the ground was frozen enough, because you get into that winter time period there where you get a little bit of moisture and then just kind of is mud for, you know, however long until you get a morning that's, say, 20 degrees. Then we can go out and do some spot grazing somewhere. We were able to do that clear up until, when was the big snow? Late January, I think that big snow was. So we were able to do some spot grazing up till then. But when we got the big snow, that pretty much brought everything to a halt. Now we do have some beef cattle that were able to graze almost the entire way through winter. When we got the big snow, I fed some bales of hay outside on the snow, but it wasn't very long until the snow had melted enough that they were able to pick out the grass, and next thing you know, your cattle were out there pushing snow out of the way to graze the grass. So there was only about a 2-week period that our beef cattle group was not able to graze. They could graze the whole way through. We had 32 inches out of that big snow. We started grazing on about the 30th of March is when we kind of started making the rounds, but we didn't really start to see any major amounts of intakes from pasture until about, I'm going to say, the 15th or 20th of April. So we still feed a lot of hay. They just are moving across the farm really quickly whenever things start to green up. We don't come out the first sight of a green blade of grass, but yet at the same time we don't wait for it to be 6 inches tall either. You know, we just kind of, when there's something out there, we'll let them go out, take one bite and just keep on moving along. I don't want to damage pastures by going out too early, but at the same time, if you wait till it's 6 inches tall, you'll never make it around before it heads out. When we went into the winter, we had plenty of cover, so it weathered the winter fairly well. We generally don't come down into this area in the wintertime, just because the cows don't need shade in the wintertime, so we have other areas of the farm where we'll feed hay outside where we want more fertility, and this is just not one of those areas where we feel we need more of that. So it's just a matter of managing what's here now. Our biggest concern here this spring was with it being dry, cool, and cloudy. We did have some intermittent periods of moisture, and during those times we had to be concerned with mud. And there were certain areas, certain fields that we didn't go into as our grazing plan called for, just because of the way the water pooled in certain areas. And this riparian area is one of those. The entrance to this field, if you have a really heavy rain, you can do a lot of damage to the entrance to this field if you come in at the wrong time. But generally, this spring's issues were less growth. Now, once we got into May and we started to get the warm temperatures and started to get some more sun, then things really matured fast. So, where the soil is covered, whether it's plant material that has been trampled down or whether it is green material that's actually growing, when you look down and you can't see soil, those areas were the quickest to respond after a drought. And we always get a drought, even though the news station says we're not in a drought. We always know. We have this little joke on shale ground that we're only 14 days away from a drought at any point in time. And that's very evident in these areas that do not have complete soil cover, whatever it is. I mean, even weeds, as ugly as they are there to cover the soil. We have covered a lot of our stream banks that used to be bare, where water had, you get a heavy rainstorm and would wash the soil banks away. Those are now covered in grass. And that there I attribute strictly to cattle management. The best way to deal with those areas is to let cattle, and that's kind of where cattle have to have access to a stream. You got to have a way to get topsoil trampled down onto those soil banks, and then this old headed out grass that's in seed, that's a free way to plant seed on a stream bank. Let the cattle trample it down in there, but then get them out. They got 24 hours max to do their job, and then get them out, and stay out of there. Give it a 60-day rest, whatever it takes, and the grass will sprout, and we see that in a lot of places down here. Kind of one of the things that's of interest to us is stockpiling, doing more and more. And we didn't have that option in the past because we had so many cows, and we had more cows than we had forage. So now that our farm we now have less cows than we have acreage for, so now we're going to actually start building stockpile. So, we've been doing it the last couple of years with my beef group, but this will be the first year that I'll really be able to push it hard for the milking herd. So that'll be kind of a short-term thing here for this year is building stockpile going into the winter. Where it's a bit of a challenge is orchard grass does not like to stockpile like fescue does, and we just don't have a lot of fescue on this farm. Apparently our management over the years has been conducive for orchard grass, and that's what we have the most of. Now there's different fields, we have other varieties in it, but orchard grass is our predominant grass, so it adds another challenge to it. So this way of farming, of grass farming. Yes, I'm an organic producer, but organic is just a market we ship to. I'm a grass farmer first. I'm a grasslands manager first, and so being part of GLC gives me a way to be able to help other folks see that there is another way that you can do things rather than plowing and doing the way we do conventionally. And then there's also, just like this, riparian areas. There is a way to manage riparian areas that does not include completely abandoning it altogether. And so that, you can, being with GLC gives me a way to help other folks learn and myself learn from what other folks are doing on how to manage those areas and converting a whole farm into grass. And it's fun. Wouldn't change it for a minute.
To learn more about the Pasture Soil Health Project video series, visit capitalrcd.org.